Elijah Thornton's hands went numb on the reins. Not from the cold. From the woman standing barefoot in the middle of Buckhorn Road, her wedding dress soaked red at the hem, her dark hair frozen to her cheeks like she'd crawled straight out of a grave. His 6-year-old son gripped his arm. "Papa, I know her. That's the lady from the picture. The one you hide in your Bible." 2 years. 2 years of silence. 2 years of believing she'd chosen silk over him. And now Clara May Sullivan stood bleeding in his path. If stories of betrayal, survival, and second chances speak to your heart, subscribe now and follow this tale to the very end. Drop a comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels across America and beyond. The northern plains had turned savage. Wind cut through everything wool, leather, bone. Elijah pulled his coat tighter and urged the horses forward, though every instinct told him to turn back, find shelter, wait out the worst of it. But Sammy needed medicine. The boy's cough had worsened 3 days ago, and the general store in town was the only place within 40 miles that stocked the tonic Doc Brennan had prescribed. "Papa, I'm cold." "I know, son. We're almost through the worst stretch." Sammy huddled closer, his small body pressed against Elijah's side. The boy wore 2 coats, his own and his dead mother's old riding jacket, that Elijah couldn't bring himself to throw away. It swallowed the child whole, but it was warm, and that's what mattered. The wagon creaked and groaned beneath them. Supplies rattled in the back, flour, salt, lamp oil, the medicine wrapped careful in cloth so it wouldn't freeze and crack. Simple things, survival things, the kind of purchases that marked the difference between making it through winter and not. Elijah's eyes scanned the white horizon. Visibility had dropped to almost nothing. The road ahead existed only as a faint suggestion, a slightly darker line cutting through the endless pale. Then his son's grip tightened on his arm. "Papa, Papa, look." Elijah squinted through the swirling snow. At first, he saw nothing, just white on white, the world erased. Then a shape emerged. A figure. Standing dead center in the road like a ghost summoned by the storm. He pulled the reins. The horses stopped, grateful for any excuse to rest. The figure didn't move. "Stay here," Elijah told his son. He climbed down from the wagon boots, sinking into snow up to his ankles. Each step forward felt heavier than the last, as though the air itself was trying to hold him back. 20 feet away, the figure became clearer. A woman, younger than him at least, wearing white, no, not white, cream-colored, a dress with lace at the collar and intricate stitching along the bodice. A wedding dress. Elijah's chest seized. He knew that dress. He'd seen sketches of it 2 years ago, when Clara had shown him the design her mother was having made. "For our wedding," she'd said, eyes bright with a future they'd both believed in. "Mama insists on the French lace. Says nothing less will do for her only daughter." He'd laughed and said she'd look beautiful in a flour sack. She'd swatted his arm and called him impossible. That was 3 weeks before she vanished. Now she stood barefoot in the snow, that same dress torn at the shoulder hem, frozen stiff and stained dark, where the white fabric met her bleeding feet. Her arms hung limp at her sides. Her dark hair clung to her face in wet strands. Her lips had gone blue. She wasn't shivering anymore. That was bad. Elijah had seen enough men freeze to death during his cavalry days to know what it meant when the body stopped trying to warm itself. Clara. Her name came out rough, scraped raw by disbelief and cold air, and 2 years of burying her memory so deep he'd almost convinced himself she'd never been real. She didn't respond. Just stared at him with those dark eyes he'd dreamed about, cursed over, tried desperately to forget, as though she couldn't quite believe he was real either. From the wagon, Sammy's voice cut through the wind. "Papa, that's her? The lady in your Bible picture?" Elijah's heart cracked open. The picture. The small daguerreotype he kept pressed between the pages of Psalms, hidden where no one would find it, where he could look at it on the nights when loneliness threatened to swallow him whole. He'd thought Sammy didn't know. He'd thought he'd been careful. Children saw everything. Elijah closed the distance between them in 4 long strides. Up close, the damage was worse. Her skin had gone gray-white waxy in that way that preceded frostbite. Her feet. God, her feet left bloody prints in the snow behind her, cracked and torn from miles of walking on frozen ground. Clara, Clara, can you hear me? Her eyes focused slowly like someone waking from a deep sleep. Recognition flickered. Then something else. Something that looked terrifyingly like relief. Eli. Her voice came out as barely a whisper, hoarse and broken. You're real. You're actually real. I'm real. I'm here. What happened to you? Where? I ran. She swayed on her feet. Had to run. Had to find. Her knees buckled. Elijah caught her before she hit the ground. She weighed nothing, far less than he remembered. The soft curves he'd once traced with his fingertips had given way to sharp angles and protruding bones. Someone had been starving her. Rage flared hot in his chest, but he pushed it down. Anger could wait. Right now she needed warmth. He lifted her easily and carried her to the wagon. Sammy's eyes had gone wide, that particular mix of fear and fascination that only children could manage. Is she dead, Papa? No, but she's close to it. Move over. Elijah settled Clara in the back among the supply crates, wrapping her in every blanket he had. His own coat went around her shoulders. Then the horse blanket from under the seat. It smelled like animal, but it was thick and dry. We need to get home, he told Sammy, climbing back to the driver's seat. Fast. Is she gonna be okay? Elijah snapped the reins harder than necessary. The horses lurched forward, sensing his urgency. I don't know, son. I honestly don't know. The Thornton Ranch materialized through the storm, like an answer to a prayer, weathered cabin-leaning barn fences, half buried in drifts. Smoke rose from the chimney. Warmth waited inside. Elijah carried Clara through the door while Sammy ran ahead to stoke the fire. The boy knew the routine. He'd been doing it since he was 4, since it became clear that survival on this ranch meant everyone working, everyone contributing, regardless of age. The cabin's interior was simple wooden table iron stove shelves lined with provisions. A single lantern cast long shadows. Elijah lowered Clara into the chair closest to the fire and began peeling away the frozen layers of her ruined dress. Her skin was ice. Colder than ice. The kind of cold that seeped into a person's bones and didn't let go without a fight. Sammy, heat water. Not boiling warm, and bring me the whiskey from the top shelf. The boy moved without question, small hands working with practiced efficiency. Elijah rubbed Clara's arms, her shoulders, her hands trying to force circulation back into frozen flesh. She'd stopped responding somewhere on the ride home. Her eyes had closed. Her breathing had gone shallow, and for one terrible moment on that frozen road, he'd been certain she was already gone. But she was still here, still breathing, still fighting. Come on, Clara. Don't you dare give up now. Not after everything. Her eyelids fluttered. A small sound escaped her throat pain or recognition, he couldn't tell. That's it. Stay with me. You hear me? You stay with me. Sammy returned with the whiskey and a pot of warm water. Elijah dipped a cloth and pressed it gently against Clara's cheeks, her neck, her wrists, anywhere. Blood ran close to the surface. Who is she, Papa? The question hung in the warm air. Elijah's hands stilled for just a moment before resuming their work. Someone I knew. A long time ago. The picture lady. The one you look at when you think I'm sleeping. Elijah's jaw tightened. You see too much for a 6-year-old. Mama's dead. I know, 'cause you told me. But you look at that other picture different. Sadder, kinda. Like she's dead, but also not dead. Sammy's brow furrowed. Is she your sweetheart, Papa? The word sounded strange coming from a child's mouth. Old-fashioned. Something Sammy must have picked up from the ranch hands or the women in town. She was, Elijah admitted quietly. Once. What happened? I don't know. He looked at Clara's pale face, the blue tinge slowly fading from her lips as warmth seeped back into her body. But I intend to find out. Clara woke to firelight and the smell of wood smoke. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The sensation was familiar. She'd woken confused too many times over the past 2 years, in rooms that weren't hers, wearing clothes she hadn't chosen, living a life that had been forced upon her, like a costume that didn't fit. But this was different. This warmth felt real. This safety felt earned. She tried to sit up and gasped as pain lanced through her feet. Easy. A hand pressed gently against her shoulder, guiding her back down. You're safe, but you're hurt bad. Don't try to move just yet. That voice. God, that voice. Deep and rough around the edges like gravel smoothed by river water. She'd heard it in her dreams for 2 years, had convinced herself she'd never hear it again. Eli. I'm here. She turned her head and found him sitting beside her chair, pulled close, hands clasped between his knees. He looked older than she remembered. Harder. The lines around his eyes had deepened, and his jaw carried a tension that hadn't been there before. 2 years had changed him. Then again, 2 years had changed her too. How do you feel? He asked. Like I walked 15 miles through a blizzard barefoot. That's because you did. No humor in his voice. Just flat statement of fact. What were you thinking, Clara? You could have died out there. You nearly did. I know. Then why? Because dying in the snow seemed better than marrying Marcus Whitmore. The name landed between them like a thrown punch. Elijah's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Then cold, careful control. Whitmore, the banker from Silver Creek. You know him? Know of him. He bought up half the mortgages in this territory last year. Ranch hands talk. Elijah's jaw worked. They say he collects things, horses, land, people. They're not wrong. Silence stretched. The fire popped and crackled. Somewhere in another room, Clara could hear small footsteps. The boy. Eli's son. She remembered him from the wagon, remembered his wide eyes and innocent voice. The lady from the picture. So Eli had kept her picture. After everything. After she'd disappeared without a word after 2 years of silence, he'd kept her image pressed between Bible pages, like a flower preserved past its season. The thought made her throat tight. You kept my picture, she said softly. Elijah's gaze dropped to his hands. Sammy wasn't supposed to find that. But he did. He did. A muscle jumped in his cheek. I tried to throw it away. 12 times at least. Could never do it. Why not? He looked up at her then, and the raw pain in his eyes stole her breath. Because it was all I had left of you. And I couldn't. He stopped, swallowed hard. I couldn't let go. Even when I hated you for leaving. Even when I told myself you'd chosen someone else, something else. I couldn't let go. Clara's eyes burned with tears she'd thought she'd exhausted long ago. I didn't leave Eli. I was taken. His whole body went still. What? My father. He made arrangements with Whitmore while I was still promising you forever. He sold me like livestock to settle his gambling debts. And when I tried to fight it, when I told them I was already promised to you, her voice cracked. They laughed. Called you a dirt farmer with dreams above his station. Said I'd thank them when I had a proper house and a proper name. Elijah stood abruptly, chair scraping against the wooden floor. He moved to the window shoulders, rigid hands clenched at his sides. 2 years, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You were gone 2 years, Clara. You couldn't find a way to tell me to send word. One letter would have changed everything. I sent 3. He spun to face her. What? 3 letters. 1 after 2 weeks, 1 after a month, 1 after 6 months. Clara pushed herself up, despite the pain needing him to see her face to read the truth there. I gave them to your foreman, Virgil Hayes. He promised to deliver them directly to your hands, swore on his honor. The color drained from Elijah's face. Virgil? He came to Silver Creek on business. I saw him from the window of the guest house where they kept me. Bribed a maid to get the letters to him. Clara's hands trembled in her lap. I told you everything, Eli. Where I was, what they'd done, how to find me. I waited months for a response. When none came, you thought I'd abandoned you. What else could I think? 3 letters. Months of silence. I started to believe what my family said about you. That you weren't strong enough. That you'd given up. That maybe... She choked on the words. Maybe I'd imagined what we had. Elijah crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her chair. His hands found hers gripping tight. I never got those letters. Not one. If I had Clara, if I had known where you were, I would have burned Silver Creek to the ground to reach you. I know that now. Tears spilled down her cheeks. But I didn't know it then. And Virgil. Virgil watched me grieve. He sat with me through the worst nights, poured me whiskey, told me you'd made your choice and I should move on. Elijah's voice hardened into something cold and dangerous. He's worked this ranch for 7 years. I trusted him with my cattle, my land, my son. He was in love with me. Clara said it quietly, the realization crystallizing as she spoke. Wasn't he? I remember how he used to look at me when I visited. I thought it was harmless. So did I. Elijah released her hands and stood pacing like a caged animal. That's why he did it. Not because he wanted you to be happy, because he wanted to suffer. Wanted you gone so he could watch me fall apart. The truth of it settled over them both like a shroud. 2 years of pain. 2 years of separation. 2 years of believing the worst about each other, all orchestrated by a man who'd smiled and offered comfort while knowing exactly what he'd stolen. Where is he now? Clara asked. In town. He takes supplies in every few weeks, stays at the boarding house, plays cards. Elijah's hands curled into fists. He's due back tomorrow. Eli. I'm going to kill him. The words came out flat, matter-of-fact, terrifying in their calm certainty. Clara had never seen Elijah like this. The warmth she remembered burned away, leaving only cold fury beneath. No, you're not. Give me one reason why not. Because your son is in the next room. Because murder will get you hanged. Because I didn't walk 15 miles through a blizzard just to watch you throw your life away on revenge. Clara reached out and caught his wrist as he passed. I didn't come here to destroy you, Eli. I came here to find out if anything was left worth saving. He stopped, looked down at her hand on his arm. The anger didn't fade, but something else crept in alongside it. Exhaustion, grief, the weight of too many years carrying burdens alone. You're bleeding, he said quietly. Your feet. I know. The bandages need changing. That can wait. No. He pulled away, but gently this time. It can't. You walked through hell to get here. The least I can do is make sure you don't lose your feet to frostbite. He moved to a cabinet and retrieved clean cloth, a jar of salve that smelled like pine, and something medicinal. When he knelt before her again, it was with careful purpose, rather than explosive emotion. Clara watched him unwrap the blood-soaked bandages from her feet and winced as cold air hit raw flesh. The damage was worse than she'd realized. Blisters broken and bleeding skin cracked deep in places 2 toenails blackened in ways that suggested they wouldn't survive. Elijah's jaw tightened as he worked, but his hands remained gentle. This is going to hurt, he warned. I know. He cleaned the wounds with warm water, then applied the salve with practiced care. Clara bit her lip against the burn, but didn't cry out. She'd survived worse. 2 years with Marcus Whitmore had taught her that pain was relative. Tell me about him, Elijah said, not looking up from his work. Whitmore. What do you want to know? Everything. What he did to you, what you escaped from. I need to understand what's coming." Clara closed her eyes. The memories rose up like bile, 2 years of captivity dressed in silk and called protection. He didn't beat me, not with his hands. He was too smart for that Mark's Ray's questions. She spoke slowly, feeling her way through truth she'd never spoken aloud. But there are other ways to hurt a person. He controlled everything. What I wore, what I ate, who I spoke to, when I slept. I was kept in a guest house on his property, separate from the main building. He called it preparing me for marriage, making sure I understood my place. Elijah's hands stilled on her feet. The wedding kept getting postponed. First his father's illness, then business in Denver, then weather, then politics. I think he never intended to marry me at all, just to own me, to keep me on display until he decided what to do with me. And tonight? Tonight was the wedding, for real this time. My father came to Silver Creek, insisted it happen immediately. I think Whitmore was running out of patience with the arrangement. Clara opened her eyes. They dressed me, painted my face, put flowers in my hair. Left me alone to wait for the ceremony to begin. You climbed out a window. Second floor. Tore the dress on the frame. Didn't stop to find shoes, there wasn't time. She met his eyes. And I ran, west toward the plains, toward home. Toward you. The words hung unspoken between them. They'll come looking, Elijah said. I know. Your father, Whitmore, they won't just let you disappear, not after you humiliated them. I know. He finished wrapping her feet in fresh bandages and sat back on his heels. The anger had settled into something colder, now more controlled. The look of a man calculating odds and strategies. Can you ride? Not today. Maybe not for a week, depending on these feet. Then you'll stay here. I'll tell anyone who asks that I found a woman half dead on the road and took her in. No name, no history. Just a stranger needing help. And if Virgil tells them different, Elijah's expression hardened. Virgil won't be telling anyone anything. Not after I have a conversation with him. Eli. Not murder. I promised. But I'm not letting that man walk free after what he did. He stood moving to the window where snow still fell in lazy spirals. He stole 2 years from us, Clara. 2 years I spent thinking you'd abandoned me. 2 years you spent locked away thinking I'd forgotten you. That's not something I can forgive. Clara wanted to argue, to insist on mercy or caution or any of the other virtues she'd been taught as a child. But the truth was, she wasn't feeling particularly merciful. Not after everything she'd endured. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. He turned to face her. But I know this, you're safe here. Whatever comes, whatever your father or Whitmore tries, you're under my protection now. And I don't give up what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. After 2 years of being owned, being claimed, being treated as property, she should have recoiled from any man declaring her his. But this was different. Elijah wasn't claiming ownership. He was offering shelter, promising to stand between her and the people who'd hurt her. For the first time in 2 years, Clara felt something loosen in her chest. The constant knot of fear that had lived there so long she'd forgotten it wasn't normal, it began slowly to unwind. Sammy asked about me, she said. Didn't he? Elijah's expression softened slightly. He saw you on the road and knew your face before I did. Said you were the picture lady. Kid's too smart for his own good. He looks like you. He has his mother's eyes. A shadow crossed Elijah's face. She died bringing him into the world. It's been just the two of us since. Clara remembered hearing about Martha Thornton's death. The news had reached her even in Silver Creek rancher's wife dead in childbirth, leaving behind a grieving husband and newborn son. She'd wept for days locked in her gilded cage, unable to offer comfort to the man she loved. I'm sorry, she said. For Martha. For everything you went through. You have nothing to apologize for. None of this was your choice. Maybe not. But I'm still sorry. Elijah moved toward her, then stopped, as if uncertain whether touch would be welcome. The hesitation broke Clara's heart a little. He'd never been unsure around her before. 2 years of loss and lies had made him cautious. She reached out her hand. He took it. They stood there in the firelight, not embracing, not kissing, not making promises they weren't sure they could keep. Just holding hands like two drowning people who'd finally found something solid to grip. Sammy appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He looked at his father and Clara at their joined hands, and something in his young face shifted. "Are you gonna stay?" he asked Clara. "Like for real. Not just tonight." Clara looked at Elijah. He looked back at her. "For now," she said softly. "I'm going to stay for now." Sammy nodded, accepting this with the straightforward practicality of childhood. "Good. Papa's been real sad. Maybe you can make him less sad." Elijah's throat worked. "Sammy, I'm just saying." The boy shrugged. "It's okay to be happy sometimes, Papa. Mama wouldn't mind." Then he turned and padded back to bed, leaving two adults standing in stunned silence. "He's 6, Clara whispered. "I know." "How does he—" "I have no idea." Elijah's voice was rough. "But he's been like that since he started talking. Sees things, understands things. It's like he was born knowing more than most people learn in a lifetime." Clara thought about the boy's words. It's okay to be happy sometimes. Such a simple truth. And yet neither of them had allowed themselves to believe it. Elijah had buried his heart in a Bible with a picture he couldn't throw away. Clara had survived by going numb, by forgetting what warmth felt like. Maybe it was time to remember. "I should rest," she said. "My feet. There's a bed in the back room, clean sheets. I changed them this morning." "Where will you sleep?" "Chair by the fire. I want to keep watch anyway in case the storm worsens." In case someone comes looking. He didn't say it, but they both heard it. Clara let him help her to the back room, let him settle her in the bed that smelled like cedar and clean wool. His hands were gentle as he arranged the blankets around her, careful not to jostle her injured feet. "Eli," he paused at the doorway. "Thank you for not turning me away, for believing me." "I'll always believe you, Clara. I just wish I'd known the truth sooner." His silhouette filled the doorway, backlit by firelight. "Get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning." "And Virgil?" Elijah's shoulders tightened. "That's a conversation for tomorrow, too." He closed the door softly behind him. Clara lay in the darkness, listening to the wind die down outside, feeling warmth seep back into bones that had been cold for so long she'd forgotten any other way of being. She was still afraid. Whitmore would come. Her father would come. The fragile safety she'd found could shatter at any moment. But for tonight, for this one night, she was warm. She was believed. She was somewhere she'd chosen to be, rather than somewhere she'd been forced to stay. For tonight, that was enough. In the other room, she could hear Elijah settling into his chair, the creak of wood, as he shifted the soft sound of a man keeping vigil over something precious. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in 2 years, Clara May Sullivan slept without nightmares. Morning came slow and gray, the storm's aftermath pressing heavy against the windows. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and Bacon's sounds of movement in the main room, and for one disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then, the pain in her feet reminded her. She pushed herself up carefully, testing her weight against the wooden floor. The bandages held, but every step sent fire shooting up through her ankles. She gritted her teeth and moved anyway. 2 years of captivity had taught her that waiting for pain to pass was a luxury she couldn't afford. When she emerged from the back room, she found Elijah at the stove and Sammy at the table, small hands wrapped around a cup of warm milk. Both turned to look at her. "You shouldn't be walking," Elijah said. "I've been lying down for 2 years. I'm done with that." Something flickered in his eyes, respect maybe, or recognition of the steel beneath her battered surface. He pulled out a chair. "At least sit while you eat." Clara lowered herself into the chair, grateful despite her words. Sammy watched her with that unsettling directness children sometimes had, seeing everything and hiding nothing. "Your feet are bleeding through the bandages," the boy observed. "Sammy." Elijah's voice carried warning. "It's all right." Clara looked at the child, really looked at him for the first time in proper light. He had Elijah's dark hair and strong jaw, but his eyes were different, pale blue, clear as winter sky. His mother's eyes, she remembered. "You're right. They are bleeding. But they'll heal." "Does it hurt?" "Yes. A lot." "Sammy, that's enough." Elijah set a plate in front of Clara. Bacon eggs bread toasted over the fire. Simple food, but more than she'd been allowed in months. Whitmore had kept her on small portions, claiming it was for her health. Really, it was just another form of control. "It's a fair question," Clara said. "And yes, it hurts a lot. But I've had worse." Sammy's brow furrowed. Worse than bleeding feet. Clara thought about the loneliness, the despair, the nights she'd lain awake, wondering if anyone in the world remembered she existed, if she'd simply fade away in that guest house, and no one would notice or care. "There are different kinds of hurt," she said carefully. "Some you can see, like my feet. Some you can't. The invisible kind is usually worse." The boy considered this with gravity beyond his years. "Papa has the invisible kind. I can tell because he smiles with his mouth but not his eyes." Elijah went very still at the stove. Clara's heart ached. 6 years old, and already this child understood things most adults spent lifetimes avoiding. "Maybe," she said softly, "we can help each other heal. All three of us." Sammy nodded as if this made perfect sense. "I'd like that. It's too quiet here with just Papa and me. He doesn't talk much." "I talk plenty," Elijah muttered. "You talk about chores and weather and horses. That's not real talking." Clara found herself smiling, despite everything, the pain, the fear, the uncertain future stretching ahead. There was something healing about this child's honesty, his refusal to pretend things were other than what they were. "What's real talking?" she asked. "Talking about feelings and dreams and stuff that matters." Sammy took a long drink of his milk. "Mama used to do that, before she went to heaven." The silence that followed was heavy with grief, Elijah's certainly, but Clara felt it too. Grief for the years lost, for the life she should have had for this child, who'd grown up without a mother's softness to balance his father's rough edges. "Your mama sounds like she was a good woman," Clara said. "She was. Papa says I have her eyes." Sammy set down his cup. "He says I have her heart too. That's why I know things." "What kind of things?" "Just things. Like when people are sad, even when they're pretending to be happy. Or when something bad is gonna happen." The boy's pale eyes met hers. "Something bad is coming, isn't it? That's why you're here. You're running from something bad." Clara's breath caught. Elijah turned from the stove, his expression unreadable. "Sammy, go check on the horses." "But Papa—" "Now." The boy slid from his chair with obvious reluctance, casting one last look at Clara before pulling on his coat and heading out into the cold. When the door closed behind him, Elijah sank into the chair across from Clara. "He shouldn't know these things," he said quietly. "He's 6 years old. He should be worrying about snowball fights and Christmas presents, not sensing danger. Children understand more than we give them credit for. That's what scares me." Elijah rubbed a hand over his face. Martha was the same way. Knew things before they happened. Felt things other people couldn't. She said it ran in her family, some kind of gift passed down through the women. But Sammy's got it too. Maybe it skipped the gender this generation. Maybe. He looked at her across the table, really looked with that intensity she remembered from 2 years ago. How are you feeling truthfully? Truthfully? Clara considered the question. Like I've been holding my breath for 2 years and finally remembered how to exhale. Like I'm waiting for someone to tell me this is all a dream and I need to wake up. Like I'm terrified and relieved and exhausted all at once. That's a lot of feelings. I've had a lot of time to collect them. Elijah reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. I meant what I said last night. You're safe here. Whatever comes. I know. She closed the distance, her fingers brushing his. But Eli Virgil comes back today, and when he sees me, he won't see you. Not at first. I need to talk to him alone, find out exactly what he did and why. And then I decide what happens next. The cold certainty in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in 2 years, protected, not owned, not controlled, but genuinely protected by someone who asked nothing in return except truth. Let me be there, she said. When you confront him, I deserve to hear his answers. Elijah's jaw tightened. Clara. He stole my letters. He destroyed any chance we had of being together before Whitmore's hold on me was complete. I have a right to face him. For a long moment, Elijah said nothing. Then slowly he nodded. You'll stay hidden until I call for you. I want to see his face when he thinks he's still gotten away with it. I want to watch him lie to me one more time. And then you walk in, and we see what kind of man Virgil Hayes really is. Clara squeezed his hand. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could go badly. Virgil's worked here long enough to know where I keep the rifles. Are you worried he'll turn violent? Elijah's expression hardened. I'm worried I will. The morning passed in strange domesticity. Clara helped where she could, despite her feet washing dishes, folding the clean linens Elijah had brought in from the line before the storm. Simple tasks that felt almost sacred after so long being forbidden to do anything useful. Sammy returned from the barn full of chatter about the horses, how the mare was restless, and the gelding had kicked his stall door again. He talked to Clara as if she'd always been there, as if her presence at the breakfast table was the most natural thing in the world. Do you know how to braid? He asked suddenly. Clara blinked at the non sequitur. Braid what? Hair, horse manes, rope, anything really. The boy shrugged. Papa's not good at braiding, says his fingers are too big, but the mare likes having her mane done pretty, and I can't reach. I can braid, Clara said. I used to do it for my younger sister before. She stopped, the memory catching sharp in her throat. Before I left home. Will you teach me? Sammy, Miss Clara's feet are injured, Elijah said from where he was mending a harness by the fire. She can't go traipsing out to the barn. What if I bring the braiding stuff inside, just rope to practice on? Elijah sighed, but Clara saw the softness beneath the exasperation. He loved this boy with everything he had. It was written in every line of his face, every careful word. Go fetch some rope then, but don't pester her if she gets tired. Sammy grinned and bolted for the door. He likes you? Elijah observed quietly. He doesn't know me. He knows enough. That's how Sammy works. He decides fast and changes his mind slow. If he's decided you're worth trusting, there's no going back. Clara watched the door where the boy had disappeared. What about you? Have you decided if I'm worth trusting? The question hung between them. Elijah set aside the harness, his hands going still. I trust that you're telling the truth about what happened. I trust that you didn't choose to leave me. He paused. The rest, the future, what we become to each other that I don't know yet. 2 years is a long time, Clara. We're not the same people we were. No, we're not. She met his eyes. But does that mean we can't try to know the people we've become? Before he could answer, Sammy burst back through the door, arms full of various rope lengths, chattering about which kind was best for practice. The moment passed. But Clara saw something in Elijah's expression, a door cracking open that had been sealed for 2 years. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was possibility. They spent the next hour at the table, Clara showing Sammy the basic 3-strand braid, then the more complex fishbone pattern her mother had taught her as a girl. The boy learned quickly, his small fingers nimble despite his complaints that the rope was too rough. "There," Clara said as he finished his first successful fishbone. "Perfect." Sammy beamed. "Can I show Papa?" "Show me what?" Elijah had been watching them from across the room, pretending to focus on his mending, but fooling no one. The boy held up his braided rope like a trophy. "Miss Clara taught me. She says I'm a natural." "Did she now?" Elijah crossed to the table, examining the braid with exaggerated seriousness. "That's fine work, son. Real fine. I'm gonna do the mare's mane tomorrow, if Miss Clara helps me reach the high parts." "We'll see about that. Her feet need more healing first." Sammy nodded solemnly. "I know. But she's gonna get better, right? She's not gonna die like Mama." The question hit like a physical blow. Clara saw Elijah flinch, saw the old grief flash across his face before he controlled it. "Miss Clara's not going to die," he said firmly. "She's hurt, but she's strong. She walked 15 miles through a blizzard to get here. A woman who can do that doesn't give up easy." "Good." Sammy seemed satisfied. "I like her. I want her to stay forever." Clara's throat tightened. Forever. Such a simple word from a child's mouth, carrying none of the weight adults gave it. No calculation of risk or reward, just pure want, expressed without filter. "I like you too, Sammy," she said softly. The boy grinned, then yawned. "I'm tired. Can I rest before lunch?" "Go on," Elijah said. "I'll wake you when it's ready." Sammy collected his braiding ropes and headed for his small room off the main living space. Clara watched him go, something aching in her chest. "He's remarkable," she said. "He's everything." Elijah's voice was rough. "When Martha died, I didn't know how I'd survive. Then they put him in my arms and I—" He stopped, swallowed. "I understood why I had to keep going. For him. He's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have him." Elijah moved to the window, checking the road. "Virgil should be back within the hour if he kept to his usual schedule. I want you hidden in the back room when he arrives. Don't come out until I call for you, no matter what you hear." "What if it goes wrong?" "There's a rifle under the bed. You know how to shoot." Clara thought of the endless hours she'd spent in that guest house planning escapes. She never attempted imagining scenarios that always ended in failure. "I can learn. It's not hard. Point at what you want to stop, pull the trigger." His eyes met hers. "If I call out storm coming, you take Sammy and run. Don't look back. There's a neighbor 5 miles east, the Hendersons. Good people. They'll help you." "Eli, I'm not planning on dying today, Clara, but I need to know you'll protect my son if something goes wrong. Can you do that?" She held his gaze. "Yes. Promise me." "I promise." He nodded once, then turned back to the window. "He's coming. I can see the dust." Clara moved toward the back room, but Elijah caught her arm as she passed. His grip was gentle, his eyes searching her face. "Whatever happens next, I'm glad you came back. I'm glad you're alive. Even if everything else falls apart, I needed you to know that." She rose on her injured feet and pressed a kiss to his cheek. Brief. Careful, a promise of something larger neither of them was ready to name. "I know," she whispered. "Now go find out who stole our future." The back room door closed behind her, just as boots sounded on the porch. Clara pressed her ear to the wooden door, heart pounding. She heard the front door open, heard the stamp of feet shaking off snow, heard a voice she recognized instantly. Virgil Hayes. "Damn cold out there. Storm dumped near 2 feet last night." His voice was easy, casual, the voice of a man with nothing to hide. "You weather it all right?" "Well enough?" Elijah's response was neutral, giving nothing away. "Sammy's napping. Don't wake him." Wouldn't dream of it. Kid needs his rest. Boots moved across the floor. I got those fence posts you wanted. Left 'em in the barn. Also picked up the mail, nothing much, just a letter from that cattle broker in Cheyenne. Thanks. Silence stretched. Clara could almost feel the tension through the door, could imagine Elijah watching Virgil with new eyes, seeing the betrayal hidden beneath 7 years of loyalty. Something on your mind, boss. You seem off. Long night. Storm had me worried about the livestock. All survived, I hope. They did. But I found something else on the road. Someone else. Pause. Clara held her breath. What do you mean, someone else? Woman. Half-frozen, barefoot, wearing what looked like a wedding dress. She collapsed right in front of the wagon. Another pause, longer this time. When Virgil spoke again, something in his voice had changed. Just a fraction. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Clara noticed. A woman. Out in that storm, is she alive? Barely. I brought her back here, warmed her up. She's been sleeping most of the day. That's good of you, Eli. Charitable. The words came a beat too slow. Any idea who she is? Where she came from? She hasn't said much. Too weak to talk. Elijah's voice remained flat, controlled. But she had dark hair, dark eyes, pretty, even half dead from cold. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush. There are lots of women with dark hair and eyes. There are. But this one had a look about her. Familiar. Like I'd seen her face before. A chair creaked. Funny thing is, she reminds me of someone I used to know. Someone who disappeared about 2 years ago. Eli. Clara Sullivan. You remember her? Don't you, Virgil? You always said she was too pretty for a ranch like this. Said I was foolish to think she'd stay. I remember. Virgil's voice had gone tight. But Clara's gone. She left. Went east with some rich man, didn't she? That's what everyone said. That's what everyone said. Elijah repeated the words slowly, deliberately. But I'm starting to wonder if everyone was wrong. What are you getting at? The woman I found, she was running from something. Running hard. Ruined her feet to get away from wherever she'd been. Another pause. She said she was kept prisoner for 2 years. Said she sent letters to someone begging for help. Letters that never arrived. Clara heard movement, Virgil shifting his weight, maybe backing toward the door. That's quite a story. But I don't see what it has to do with... She gave those letters to someone she trusted. Someone who promised to deliver them. Elijah's voice dropped low, dangerous. Someone who looked her in the eye and swore on his honor. Now hold on. Was it worth it? Virgil? Watching me grieve. Watching me drink myself half to death those first few months, you sat with me through the worst of it. Poured me whiskey. Told me she'd made her choice and I should move on. Something crashed, a chair overturning maybe. You held those letters in your hands. You knew exactly where she was, what she was going through, and you let it happen. Eli, listen to me. Why? Why would you do that to me? I trusted you. I trusted you with everything. Because you didn't deserve her. The words exploded out of Virgil, raw and ugly. You with your broken-down ranch and your dead wife's grave and your sad eyes that made everyone feel sorry for you. Clara was too good for this life, too beautiful, too refined. She deserved silk and silver, not dirt and horse manure. That wasn't your choice to make. Someone had to make it. She was going to throw herself away on you, waste her whole life out here in the middle of nowhere. I saved her from that. You imprisoned her. Elijah's voice had gone cold. You condemned her to 2 years, locked in a guest house, treated like property, by a man who collected people like objects. You call that saving? I didn't know, I thought... Virgil's voice cracked. Her family said she'd be happy. They said Whitmore would give her everything she wanted. Everything except freedom. Everything except choice. Everything except me. Clara couldn't wait any longer. She pushed open the door and stepped into the main room. Virgil's face went white. "Hello, Virgil." Her voice came out steady, despite the shaking in her hands. "Remember me?" He stared at her like she was a ghost, which in a way she supposed she was. The ghost of everything he'd tried to bury standing before him in borrowed clothes with bandaged feet. "Clara, you're alive? Yes, barely. No thanks to you." She moved closer each step, sending pain shooting through her ankles. "I wrote you 3 letters. I told you everything, where I was, what they were doing to me, how you could reach me. I trusted you, Virgil. I thought you were Eli's friend." "I am his friend." "Friends don't destroy each other's lives. Friends don't steal letters and watch the person they claim to care about drink himself into oblivion." Clara stopped directly in front of him. "Tell me, when you burned those letters, did you feel anything? When you watched Eli suffer, when you heard him blame himself for driving me away, did any part of you feel guilty?" Virgil's eyes darted toward the door, toward Elijah, toward any escape that didn't involve facing the consequences of what he'd done. "I didn't. I never meant." "You didn't what?" "Didn't mean to trap me in a life of captivity. Didn't mean to torture Eli with false hope that someday he'd heal from losing me. Didn't mean for any of it to turn out the way it did." Clara's voice rose. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You made a choice, Virgil. A deliberate, calculated choice to destroy us both." "I loved you." The confession tore out of him ugly and desperate. "From the first moment I saw you, I loved you, and you never even looked at me. You only saw him." He pointed at Elijah. "A broken-down rancher with nothing to offer except hard work and hard times. I was right there, right in front of you, and you acted like I didn't exist." "So you decided to make me not exist for him?" Clara's hands clenched at her sides. "If you couldn't have me, neither could he." "No, I thought if you went away, if he believed you'd chosen someone else, he'd eventually move on. And maybe—" Virgil's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Maybe someday you'd come back, and he'd be married to someone else, and you'd finally see me." The delusion was so complete, so twisted, that Clara almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "I would never have chosen you, Virgil. Not then. Not now. Not ever." She let the words land like blows. "Not because of your station or your wealth or your prospects. Because I loved Eli. Because he saw me as a person, not a prize to be won. You could have had all the money in the world, and I still would have chosen him." Virgil's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like a child being told that everything he'd believed was wrong. Then something changed. His expression hardened, shame transforming into anger. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Both of you. Whitmore won't let this go. He's got lawyers, lawman connections in every town from here to Denver. When he finds out where you are, let him come." Elijah stepped forward, positioning himself between Virgil and Clara. "I've faced worse than rich men with grudges." "You haven't faced him. He destroys people, Eli. Not just their lives, their reputations, their families, their futures. If he decides to make an example of you—" "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning." Virgil's eyes flickered. "I may have done wrong by you, but I'm not your enemy here. Whitmore is. And if you're smart, you'll put Clara on the next stagecoach headed anywhere else and pretend this never happened." "Get out." Elijah's voice was quiet. Deadly quiet. "Eli, get off my land, now, before I do something we'll both regret." Virgil looked between them, the woman he'd wanted, and the man he'd betrayed, and something in his face suggested he finally understood the magnitude of what he'd done. Not just the letters, not just the lies, but the trust shattered beyond repair. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were hollow, inadequate, but he said them anyway. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." "It's worth nothing." Elijah opened the door. "Leave your key to the barn on the porch. Your final wages will be sent to the boarding house. Don't come back here, ever." Virgil held his gaze for one long moment. Then, without another word, he walked out into the cold. The door closed behind him. Clara exhaled shakily, realizing only now how hard she'd been gripping the back of a chair to stay upright. Her feet screamed in protest, but she couldn't bring herself to move. "It's done," she whispered. "Not even close." Elijah turned to face her, and the fear in his eyes hit her harder than any words could. Virgil was right about one thing. Whitmore won't let this go, and now that Virgil knows where you are, he'll tell them. He might, out of spite or fear, or just because he's got nothing left to lose. Elijah crossed to her hands, catching her elbows as her legs threatened to give out. "We need to prepare. Food weapons a plan for getting you and Sammy out if they come in force. Eli, I won't run again. I can't keep running forever. Then we make a stand, here, on ground I know." His jaw set. "But we do it smart. We do it together." Clara looked up at him. This man who'd been broken by her absence and was somehow still standing, still fighting, still willing to risk everything for a woman who'd brought nothing but trouble to his door. "Why?" she asked. "After everything, the pain, the lies, the years we lost, why are you still willing to fight for me?" Elijah's hands moved from her elbows to cup her face, rough palms gentle against her cheeks. "Because I spent 2 years believing I'd lost you forever. Because I told myself every story that would make the hurt easier to bear, that you'd left, that you'd chosen better, that you'd forgotten me." His voice roughened. "And none of it made a difference. None of it made me stop loving you. If I'm going to love you anyway, I might as well do it properly. Fight for you properly. Give us a real chance instead of just a memory." Clara's eyes burned. "We might lose everything." "We might, but losing everything fighting for something real." He leaned his forehead against hers. "That's better than surviving by giving up." She closed her eyes. Let his warmth seep into her. Let herself believe just for a moment that they might actually survive this. "Papa." They pulled apart. Sammy stood in the doorway of his room, eyes wide with a knowledge too heavy for a 6-year-old. "I heard yelling. Is the bad man gone?" Elijah crossed to his son, kneeling to meet the boy's eyes. "Virgil's gone. He won't be coming back." "Good." Sammy's small hand reached out to touch his father's face. "He had shadows inside him. I could always see them, but I didn't know what they meant. Now I do." "What do they mean?" "He was sick, in his heart, the kind of sick that makes people do bad things and call them good." The boy looked past his father to Clara. "But you don't have shadows, just hurts. Hurts can heal." Clara's throat tightened. "How do you know these things, Sammy?" "Mama told me, before she went to heaven." The boy shrugged, as if this were perfectly normal. "She said I'd need to see true when Papa couldn't. She said someone would come who needed protecting, and I had to help Papa remember how to love again." Elijah made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh, maybe both. "Your mama was a wise woman." "I know. She still talks to me sometimes, in dreams." Sammy tugged at his father's sleeve. "She says it's okay, Papa. She says Clara's supposed to be here. She says the storm brought her home." Clara didn't believe in ghosts or prophetic children or messages from the dead. But standing in that small cabin watching a boy speak wisdom beyond his years, she wondered if maybe there were more things in this world than her rational mind could explain. "Come here, Sammy," she said softly. The boy crossed to her without hesitation. She knelt carefully, ignoring the pain in her feet, and wrapped her arms around him. "I'm going to do my best to protect you," she whispered. "Whatever comes." "I know." His small arms tightened around her neck. "That's why Mama sent you." Over the boy's head, Clara met Elijah's eyes. They were bright with unshed tears, but beneath the emotion, she saw something else. Resolve. Whatever was coming, Whitmore's men. Virgil's betrayal, the forces arrayed against them, they would face it together. As a family. The kind of family Clara had stopped believing she'd ever have. The afternoon passed quickly after that. Elijah checked their weapons, counting ammunition and testing each rifle to make sure it fired true. Clara helped where she could, familiarizing herself with the layout of the cabin, memorizing escape routes, learning which floorboards creaked and which windows stuck. Sammy appointed himself lookout, stationed at the window with instructions to report any riders on the road. They were preparing for war. And somehow, despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, Clara felt more alive than she had in 2 years. "Rider coming." Sammy's voice cut through the quiet. Elijah was at the window in 2 strides, rifle in hand. Clara grabbed the pistol he'd given her, smaller, easier to manage, but deadly at close range. "Just one?" Elijah said, squinting into the distance. "Coming slow." "Virgil." "No, wrong horse." He watched the approaching figure. "Looks like—" He lowered the rifle slightly. "Doc Brennan." Clara felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "The doctor?" "Only one within 50 miles. He treats everyone from here to Silver Creek." Elijah set the rifle aside but kept it within reach. "Stay back. Let me see what he wants." The doctor's arrival was slow, his old mare picking her way carefully through the snow. He dismounted stiffly, an older man, gray-bearded and kind-eyed, carrying a worn leather bag. "Eli." He nodded as he climbed the porch steps. "Heard you had trouble out on Buckhorn Road." "Word travels fast." "Small territory. Man finds a half-dead woman in a blizzard, people talk." The doctor's eyes moved past Elijah to where Clara stood in the shadows. "That her—" Elijah hesitated, then stepped aside. "She needs her feet looked at." "I imagine she does." Doc Brennan entered the cabin, removing his hat. "Ma'am, I'm John Brennan. I've been treating folks in this region for 30 years. Mind if I take a look at that damage?" Clara glanced at Elijah, who nodded. "All right. But I should tell you, I know who you are." The doctor's voice was gentle but direct. "Clara Sullivan. Went missing 2 years ago. Folks said she'd run off east, but I always wondered." He set his bag on the table. "A woman doesn't disappear like that without reason. Usually bad reason. You knew?" "Suspected." He gestured for her to sit. "I treated your father once few years back. Something in his eyes I didn't like. The way he talked about daughters like they were investments rather than people." He began unwrapping her bandages. "When you vanished, I asked questions. Nobody wanted to answer them." Clara winced as the cloth pulled away from raw flesh. "Easy now. Let's see what we're working with." The doctor examined her feet with practiced care. "Frostbite on 3 toes, might lose the nails, but should keep the toes. Deep lacerations on both heels. You walked a long way on these. 15 miles, maybe more. 15 miles barefoot in a blizzard." He shook his head. "Most folks would have given up after 1. Giving up wasn't an option." Doc Brennan looked up at her, something like respect in his weathered face. "No, I don't suppose it was." He reached into his bag. "I'm going to clean these properly and apply a real poultice. You'll need to stay off them for at least a week, preferably 2. No arguments." "I'll try." "You'll do more than try." He began working, hands gentle, despite the pain his ministrations caused. "Eli, I assume you're keeping her here." "For now." "Good. She shouldn't be moved anyway, not with these injuries." The doctor's voice dropped lower. "I should tell you there's been talk in town about the wedding that didn't happen in Silver Creek, about a bride who ran off and left Marcus Whitmore standing at the altar." Clara's blood chilled. "How much talk?" "Enough. Whitmore's been asking questions, sending men to neighboring towns. He's not the type to let an embarrassment slide." Doc Brennan wrapped fresh bandages around Clara's feet. "If I were you, I'd prepare for visitors, the unfriendly kind." "We're already preparing," Elijah said. "Good. Then I'll tell you something else." The doctor finished his work and sat back. "Whitmore may have money and connections, but he's not well liked. He's squeezed too many ranchers, foreclosed on too many families. There are people in this territory who'd be happy to see him taken down a peg. If push comes to shove, you might have more allies than you think. Are you offering to be one of those allies? I'm offering to not answer questions if anyone asks where Clara Sullivan might be hiding. He stood gathering his bag. I'm an old man, Eli, too old for fighting and too tired for politics. But I remember what it's like to be young and in love and up against forces bigger than yourself. He moved toward the door. Keep her safe. Keep that boy safe. And if you need medical attention after whatever's coming, send word. I'll be there. Elijah extended his hand. Thank you, Doc. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're all still alive. He shook Elijah's hand firmly. Good luck. The doctor rode away into the gathering dusk, his figure growing smaller against the endless white. Clara sat with her freshly bandaged feet, processing everything she'd heard. He's right, she said quietly. Whitmore won't stop. He'll keep looking until he finds me. Then let him find you. Elijah's voice was steady. Let him come to this ranch, to this ground where I know every shadow and every angle. Let him bring his lawyers and his hired men and his righteous anger. He turned to face her. And let me show him what happens when he threatens my family. My family. The words wrapped around Clara's heart and squeezed. I'm not your family, she said softly. Not yet. No. Elijah crossed to her, kneeling before her chair. Not yet, but you could be, if you want, if you'll stay long enough to find out what we might become. Clara looked at this man battered by life, but not broken, grieving, but not destroyed, scared, but not running. She looked at Sammy watching from the corner with those ancient eyes in a child's face. She looked at the small cabin that held more warmth than any mansion she'd seen in Silver Creek. I'll stay, she said. Whatever comes. Elijah took her hands in his. Outside, the sun set behind the mountains, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose. And somewhere to the east, Marcus Whitmore was already gathering his forces. 3 days passed in tense waiting. Clara's feet began to heal, the angry red fading to tender pink, the deepest cuts scabbing over. She could walk now without leaving blood on the floor, though each step still cost her. But the real healing happened in smaller moments. Breakfast with Sammy, teaching him new braiding patterns, while Elijah watched from across the room. Evenings by the fire, talking about nothing and everything, filling in the gaps of 2 lost years. The brush of hands when passing dishes. The weight of unspoken words that grew lighter each day. On the 4th morning, Sammy's voice rang out from his lookout post. Riders coming, Papa. Lots of them. Elijah was at the window before Clara could stand. His face hardened into something she barely recognized. 6 men. Maybe 7. Coming fast. Clara's stomach dropped. Whitmore? Can't tell yet, but they're not friendly. You don't ride that hard in snow unless you mean business. He grabbed the rifle from its place by the door. Take Sammy to the back room. Lock the door. Don't come out unless I call for you. Eli. Clara. He turned to her, and beneath the steel she saw fear. Not for himself, for her, for Sammy. Please, let me handle this. She wanted to argue. Every fiber of her being screamed against hiding while he faced danger alone. But Sammy's small hand slipped into hers, trembling slightly, and she remembered her promise. Come on, sweetheart. She guided the boy toward the back room. Let's go. Is the bad man here? Sammy's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know, but your papa's going to protect us. What if he can't? Clara knelt before him, ignoring the protest from her healing feet. Then we protect each other. Remember what your papa said. If he calls out storm coming, we run. We don't look back. We go to the Hendersons and we wait. Sammy nodded, his pale eyes too old for his young face. I don't want to leave, Papa. Neither do I. Clara pulled him close. But sometimes loving someone means doing what they ask, even when it hurts. Your papa needs to know we're safe. That's what will make him strong. They reached the back room. Clara closed the door, turned the lock, and positioned herself between Sammy and the entrance. The pistol felt heavy in her hand. Through the wooden walls, she heard boots on the porch. Multiple sets. Then a voice, deep-cultured, carrying the particular arrogance of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. "Mr. Thornton, I presume—" Clara's blood turned to ice. Marcus Whitmore. She'd know that voice anywhere. It had haunted her dreams for 2 years. Always calm, always controlled, always absolutely certain of its own authority. "Who's asking?" Elijah's response came measured, giving nothing away. "My name is Marcus Whitmore. I believe you have something that belongs to me." "I don't know what you're talking about. Please, let's not play games. A woman fled my home 4 nights ago. A woman I was to marry. I have it on good authority she was found on this road, brought to this ranch." Whitmore's voice hardened. "I want her back. There's no woman here except my late wife's ghost, and she's not much for conversation." A pause, then a laugh, cold without humor. "Mr. Thornton, I admire your loyalty, misguided as it is, but Clara Sullivan is my legal property. Her father signed a contract guaranteeing her hand in marriage. By fleeing, she violated that contract. By harboring her, you become complicit in her breach. People aren't property, Mr. Whitmore. Not in this territory. Not anywhere. A romantic notion. But the law sees things differently. I have documents, witnesses, the full weight of Silver Creek's legal apparatus behind me." Another pause. "I also have 6 armed men who are growing cold and impatient. Now I'm prepared to be reasonable. Hand over Clara and we'll leave peacefully. No charges pressed. No unpleasantness. You can return to your quiet life and pretend none of this happened." Sammy pressed closer to Clara's side. She could feel him shaking. "It's okay," she whispered. "Your papa won't let them in." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. 6 armed men. Legal documents. The power of wealth against one rancher with a rifle. "I'll ask you one more time," Elijah said, his voice steady. "There's no one here by that name. You're welcome to search the property if you don't believe me, but I'd appreciate if your men stayed outside. My son's sleeping, and I don't want him frightened." "Your son." Something shifted in Whitmore's tone. "Yes, I heard about the boy. Motherless, isn't he? Such a tragedy." The threat hung unspoken in the air. Clara's grip tightened on the pistol. "You leave my son out of this. I'm merely observing that children need stability, Mr. Thornton. Security. The kind of security that comes from not antagonizing powerful men." Whitmore's voice dropped lower. "Give me Clara, and I'll ensure your boy grows up with a father. Refuse, and I cannot guarantee what happens next." Silence stretched. Clara could imagine Elijah standing there, rifle in hand, calculating odds that didn't favor him. 6 against 1. Legal backing against frontier justice. Wealth against grit. "I reckon," Elijah said slowly, "that you've never had someone tell you no. Excuse me. Men like you're used to getting what you want. Money opens doors, buys silence, makes problems disappear. You've never had to fight for something, never had to earn it." A creak of floorboards. "But this ain't Silver Creek, Mr. Whitmore. This is my land, my home, and I don't much care about your contracts or your lawyers or your hired guns." "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Elijah's voice turned cold. "Now get off my property before I decide to exercise my rights as a landowner dealing with trespassers." Another long pause. Clara held her breath. "Very well." Whitmore's voice had gone flat dangerous. "If that's how you want to proceed. But understand this, Mr. Thornton, I will have what's mine. Today, tomorrow, next week. Eventually, you'll sleep or leave or make some small error. And when you do, I'll be waiting." Boots retreated across the porch. Horses snorted and stamped. Clara heard the sounds of men mounting, of leather creaking and metal jingling. Then Whitmore's voice came once more, fainter now, carrying across the distance. 1 week, Mr. Thornton. I'm giving you 1 week to reconsider. After that, I stopped being reasonable. The sound of hooves faded into the distance. Clara waited, barely breathing, until she heard Elijah's voice through the door. "They're gone. You can come out." She unlocked the door with trembling hands. Elijah stood in the main room, rifle still gripped tight, face pale beneath his weathered tan. "You heard." "Every word." Clara moved toward him. "Eli, he's not going to stop. You heard what he said one week?" "I heard." "Then we need to run, tonight, before he has time to—" "No." Elijah set the rifle down, but his hands still shook. "Running won't solve anything. He's got resources, connections. If we run, he'll track us. We'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders." "Then what do we do?" Elijah looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something she hadn't expected. Not fear or defeat, but calculation. "We fight, but not alone." He moved to the window, watching the empty road. "Doc Brennan said Whitmore's made enemies. Squeezed too many people, foreclosed on too many families. Time to find out if those enemies are willing to help." "How?" "I start talking. To the neighbors, the ranchers, anyone who's got reason to hate the man. We build a case, not just emotion, but evidence. Something solid enough to take to a real lawman, not one in Whitmore's pocket." Clara's mind raced. "The letters, the ones I sent through Virgil. If we could prove they existed, prove he knew I was being held against my will. Virgil might still have them." Elijah's jaw tightened. He was always a pack rat, kept everything. If he didn't burn them, they're probably still at his room in the boarding house. "Would he give them to us?" "Not willingly, but maybe he doesn't have to know we're looking." Clara understood. Breaking and entering. Theft. Crimes that could land them both in jail if caught. It's risky. Everything's risky now. Elijah turned to face her. "But those letters are proof, Clara. Proof that your father sold you like livestock. Proof that Whitmore knew you weren't willing. Proof that Virgil participated in keeping you imprisoned. With that kind of evidence, even Whitmore's lawyers would have trouble spinning a story." Sammy had been quiet through all of this, watching the adults with those unsettling eyes. Now he spoke up. "I know where Virgil keeps his important things." Both Clara and Elijah turned to stare at him. "What?" Elijah said. "His important things. Papers and stuff. He showed me once when you were out fixing fences and he was supposed to be watching me." Sammy's expression was matter-of-fact. "He has a box under the loose floorboard in his room. Said it was his insurance policy. I asked what that meant, and he laughed and said someday I'd understand." Clara's heart began to pound. "Sammy, are you sure?" "I'm sure. Third floorboard from the window left side. It lifts right up." Elijah knelt before his son. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" "You didn't ask. And Virgil said it was a secret." The boy shrugged. "But he's a bad man now, right? Bad men don't get to keep secrets." Clara felt something surge in her chest, hope sharp and unexpected. If those letters were in that box, if Virgil had kept them as some kind of leverage or trophy. "I'll go tonight," Elijah said. "After dark. Virgil drinks at the saloon until late. I can be in and out before he gets back. I'm coming with you. Clara, your feet are healing. And this is my fight as much as yours." She met his eyes. "Those are my letters, Eli. My words. My 2 years of pain poured onto paper. I have a right to take them back." He wanted to argue. She could see it in his face. But something else won out, respect maybe, or the recognition that she'd earned her place in this battle. "All right, but you stay in the wagon. I go inside alone." "Agreed." Sammy tugged at his father's sleeve. "What about me?" Elijah's expression softened. "You stay here, son. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone except me or Clara." "But what if the bad men come back?" "They won't. Not tonight. Whitmore gave us a week, and men like him keep their word when it suits them. He'll wait, try to wear us down, make us nervous." Elijah squeezed his son's shoulder. "Can you be brave for a few hours? Keep watch like you always do." Sammy's small jaw set. I can be brave. That's my boy. The hours until nightfall stretched like taffy. Clara helped Sammy with his reading, one of the few skills she could offer from her years of forced refinement. The boy was quick, already recognizing most words, sounding out the difficult ones with determined patience. Miss Clara. Yes. When you and Papa get those letters, will the bad man go away? Clara considered how to answer. She didn't want to lie, but neither did she want to burden a 6-year-old with adult fears. The letters are part of making him go away. But it might take time. And other things too. What other things? Help from good people. Truth being heard by someone who can do something about it. Justice. Sammy nodded slowly. Mama used to say justice was like water. Always finds its way, even through rock. Just takes time. Clara's throat tightened. Your mama was wise. I know. That's why I miss her. The boy looked down at his book. But I'm glad you're here now. It's less quiet. The simple honesty of children. Clara reached out and smoothed his hair. I'm glad I'm here too. Darkness came slow and cold. Elijah prepared the wagon while Clara bundled up in borrowed clothes, a coat, a hat, gloves that were too big but warm. Her feet ached inside the boots he'd given her, but she could walk. That was enough. You sure about this? Elijah asked as he helped her onto the wagon seat. I'm sure. He climbed up beside her and took the reins. The horses moved forward, breath steaming in the frigid air. They rode in silence for the first mile. Then Clara spoke. What was she like, Martha? The question seemed to catch Elijah off guard. He didn't answer immediately. Strong, he said finally. Stronger than anyone I've ever known. She could birth a calf, cook a meal, mend a fence, and still have energy to laugh at my jokes. A pause. She saw good in people even when they didn't deserve it. Believed everyone had a chance at redemption. Did you love her? Yes, no hesitation. Not the way I loved you, different, quieter, but real. He glanced at Clara. Does that bother you? No. And she meant it. I'm glad you weren't alone all those years. I'm glad Sammy had a mother even for a little while. She would have liked you. You think so? I know so. She always said I was too hard on myself, carried too much weight alone. She'd have been happy to see me with someone who could share that load. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. She probably sent you. If Sammy's right about her still being around, she probably orchestrated this whole thing from wherever she is. Clara laughed softly. That's a comforting thought. Being part of a dead woman's matchmaking scheme. Martha would have called it practical, not morbid. The smile faded. I miss her. But it's different now. The grief's settled into something I can carry instead of something that carries me. That's healing. Maybe. Or maybe it's just time doing what time does. The town appeared ahead, a cluster of lights in the darkness. Elijah guided the wagon to a spot behind the general store, out of sight from the main street. Stay here. If anything goes wrong, take the wagon and go straight home. Eli. Promise me. Clara met his eyes. I promise. He climbed down, moving with the practiced silence of a man who knew how to go unnoticed. Within moments, he'd disappeared into the shadows. Clara sat alone in the wagon, heart pounding. Every sound seemed magnified. The creak of wood, the distant murmur of voices from the saloon, the whisper of wind through empty streets. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 15. Then a shape emerged from the darkness, moving quickly toward the wagon. Clara's hand went to the pistol at her hip. It's me. Elijah's voice low and urgent. He climbed onto the wagon, something clutched against his chest. In the faint moonlight, Clara could see it, a wooden box, the size of a large Bible. You found it. Exactly where Sammy said. He handed her the box. I didn't open it. Wanted to wait until we were clear. Elijah snapped the reins and the horses moved. They rode without speaking, putting distance between themselves and the town. Only when the lights had faded to a dim glow behind them did Clara's fingers find the latch on the box. It opened with a small click. Inside paper. Dozens of documents neatly folded and stacked. Bills of sale, IOUs, personal letters, the detritus of a man who'd spent years collecting other people's secrets. And there, near the bottom 3 envelopes, with familiar handwriting. Clara's own. "Oh God." The words came out strangled. He kept them. He actually kept them. She pulled the letters out with trembling hands. The first was still sealed, never opened. The second had been slit cleanly along the top. The third showed signs of being read multiple times, the paper worn at the creases. "What do they say?" Elijah asked. Clara unfolded the first letter, the one that had never been opened. Her eyes scanned the words she'd written 2 years ago, desperate and alone, and still believing that help would come. "Everything." Her voice broke. "I told you everything, Eli. Where they'd taken me, why they'd done it. I begged you to come. I said I'd wait forever if I had to." She moved to the second letter, the one that had been opened. "This one I wrote after a month of silence. I thought maybe the first had been lost. I explained again, gave more details about the guest house, the guards, the best times to approach." A tear slid down her cheek. "I said I was starting to lose hope, but couldn't give up. Couldn't stop believing you'd find me." The third letter was hardest. Clara's hands shook as she read words she barely remembered writing. 6 months. I'd almost given up. I wrote. She had to stop, collect herself. I wrote that if you didn't answer this one, I'd understand. That maybe you'd moved on, found someone else. That I wouldn't blame you. Clara. I said goodbye, Eli. The tears came freely now. I said goodbye because I thought you'd abandoned me. And the whole time Virgil had these in a box under his floorboard, watching you suffer, watching me give up doing nothing. Elijah's jaw tightened until she could see the muscle jumping. Is there anything else in there? Anything that ties him to Whitmore directly? Clara wiped her eyes and looked back at the box. She shuffled through more papers, reading by moonlight, until her hand closed on something unexpected. A receipt. Dated 2 years ago. Payment from Marcus Whitmore to Virgil Hayes for services rendered. My God. Clara stared at the paper. He paid him. Whitmore paid Virgil. It wasn't just jealousy, it was a transaction. Virgil sold you out for money. Elijah pulled the horses to a stop. He took the receipt, studied it in the dim light. $200. His voice was deadly quiet. That's what our future was worth to him. $200. It's proof, Eli. Proof that Whitmore knew I wasn't willing. Proof that he conspired with Virgil to keep us apart. This isn't just a breach of contract case, this is kidnapping. False imprisonment. Conspiracy. We need a lawyer. A real one, not someone in Whitmore's pocket. There's a federal marshal's office in Cheyenne. I heard Whitmore's men talking about it, how they avoided the territory because the marshal there couldn't be bought. Cheyenne's 4 days' ride. Then we leave tomorrow. Clara grabbed his arm. We take this evidence to someone who'll actually do something with it. Someone who can bring Whitmore down legally properly in a way that sticks. Elijah looked at her, at the box of damning evidence, at the long road stretching ahead in the darkness. And Sammy. He comes with us. I'm not leaving him alone, and I'm not leaving him with neighbors while Whitmore's still hunting. It's dangerous. The road, the weather, the possibility that Whitmore finds out we're gone and follows. It's more dangerous to stay and wait for him to make his move. Clara's voice steadied. You said yourself running without a plan just delays the inevitable. But this isn't running. This is fighting. Taking the battle to ground where we actually have a chance. For a long moment, Elijah said nothing. Then slowly he nodded. We leave at first light. Pack light, travel fast. If we push, we can make it in 3 days instead of 4. What about the ranch? The animals? I'll ask Henderson to look in on them. He owes me from when I helped with his barn last spring. Elijah took her hand. This is really happening. We're really doing this. We're really doing this. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss against her cold fingers. Then let's go home. We've got a lot of packing to do. The wagon rolled forward through the night. Behind them, the town slept unaware of the stolen evidence that would change everything. Ahead, 400 miles of frozen territory waited. But for the first time since she'd fled into that blizzard, Clara felt something other than fear. She felt like they might actually win. When they arrived back at the ranch, Sammy was waiting at the window exactly as promised. The boy's face lit up when he saw them, then went serious as he noticed their expressions. Did you find them? The important papers? We found them. Elijah lifted the box. You were right about the hiding spot. Your memory saved us. Sammy's chest puffed with pride. I'm a good helper. The best. Clara knelt to hug him, ignoring the protest from her feet. Now we need your help with something else. We're going on a trip, a long one. A trip where? Cheyenne. There's a man there who can help us deal with Mr. Whitmore. The bad man who wanted to take you. Yes, we're going to make sure he can never hurt anyone again. Sammy considered this with that unsettling gravity he carried. Will it be dangerous? Maybe, but we'll be together. And together, we're strong. Okay. The boy nodded. I'll pack my things. He disappeared into his room with the single-minded focus only children possessed. Clara looked at Elijah. He takes everything in stride. He's had to. Life hasn't given him the luxury of falling apart. Elijah set the box on the table. We should look through the rest of this. There might be more useful evidence. They spent the next hour sorting through Virgil's collection of secrets. Bills of sale for property he'd had no right to sell. IOUs from gamblers he'd held in debt. Letters containing information clearly meant for blackmail. And one more document that made Clara's blood run cold. A letter from her father, addressed to Virgil, dated just 2 weeks ago. Find her, Clara read aloud. Whitmore is getting impatient, and I cannot afford another delay. The money I owe him will destroy our family if the marriage doesn't proceed. I don't care what you have to do or who you have to hurt. Find Clara and bring her back before she ruins us all. She looked up at Elijah. My father's still looking. He and Whitmore both. And now they've got Virgil helping them again. He'll tell them everything. About our confrontation, about me being here, about... She stopped, a terrible thought forming. Eli, what if that's why Whitmore gave us a week, not to wear us down, but to wait for Virgil to report back? Then we're not leaving at first light. Elijah moved to the window, scanning the darkness. We're leaving now. Now, but Sammy, the packing. We take what we can carry. Food, ammunition, warm clothes, the evidence. Nothing else matters. His voice was hard. If Virgil told them about our argument, they know I'm suspicious. They know you're here. They might already be on their way. Clara's stomach dropped. You think they'd attack at night? I think Marcus Whitmore is a man who doesn't like losing. And I think my week just got a lot shorter. Within 20 minutes, they were loaded into the wagon. Sammy, half asleep but uncomplaining, was bundled in blankets in the back. The evidence box sat beneath the seat. Rifles, a shotgun, ammunition, dried food, water, everything they might need for 3 hard days of travel. Elijah took one last look at the cabin. His home. His dead wife's grave on the hillside. Everything he'd built over years of backbreaking work. I might never see this place again, he said quietly. Clara touched his arm. You will. We'll come back. When this is over, we'll come back and rebuild whatever needs rebuilding. Promise? Promise. He nodded once, then climbed onto the wagon seat. The horses moved forward, pulling them away from everything familiar toward something unknown. The night swallowed them whole. 3 hours later, Clara heard hoofbeats behind them. Eli. I hear them. His hands tightened on the reins. Could be nothing. Travelers, maybe. At 3 in the morning. He didn't answer, just urged the horses faster. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Then a voice called out through the darkness. Thornton! Stop the wagon! Virgil. And he wasn't alone. Elijah didn't stop. He cracked the reins harder, pushing the horses into a dangerous gallop across snow-covered ground. The wagon lurched and bounced, threatening to overturn with every rut. Get down, he told Clara. Keep Sammy covered. Clara scrambled into the back, throwing her body over the boy. Sammy's eyes were wide in the darkness, but he didn't cry. Didn't make a sound, just pressed himself flat and trusted the adults to save him. The hoofbeats grew louder. 3 horses, maybe 4, gaining fast. Thornton. Virgil's voice cut through the night again. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Elijah reached for the rifle beside him, steering with one hand. The wagon swayed dangerously. Eli, you can't shoot and drive at the same time, Clara said. Then you drive. She didn't hesitate. Scrambling forward, she took the reins from his hands. Her injured feet screamed in protest as she braced herself, but she held firm. The horses responded to her grip, maintaining their desperate pace. Elijah twisted in the seat, rifle raised. A shot cracked through the darkness. Wood splintered somewhere behind them. Warning shot, Elijah muttered. They want us alive. They want me alive, Clara corrected. You and Sammy are just obstacles. Another shot, closer this time. The horses screamed and surged forward, pure animal terror, driving them faster than any whip could. Elijah steadied his aim, fired. A horse shrieked. Hoofbeats stumbled, fell away, one rider down. Damn you, Thornton! Virgil's voice was ragged now, furious. That was $100 horse. Should have thought about that before you sold your soul. The remaining riders kept coming. Clara could hear them now, close enough to make out individual horses, individual voices calling to each other in the darkness. There's a creek ahead, Elijah said. 1/4 mile. If we can make it across before they catch up, the water might slow them down. And if we don't make it, then we stand and fight. Clara's arms burned from holding the reins. Her healing feet throbbed with each jolt of the wagon. But she didn't let go. Couldn't let go. Everything depended on getting to that creek. The darkness ahead seemed to deepen. She heard rushing water before she saw it, the creek swollen with snowmelt, cutting across the road like a black ribbon. Don't slow down, Elijah said. Hit it straight and keep moving. Eli, if the wagon gets stuck, it won't. Trust me. She trusted him. God help her, after everything she still trusted him. The wagon plunged into the creek. Icy water surged around the wheels, splashing up onto the seat. Clara gasped at the cold, but kept the horses moving. They struggled against the current, hooves slipping on rocky bottom, but they pushed through. The far bank rose ahead. Clara urged the horses up, felt the wagon tilt dangerously, then right itself as they crested the rise. Behind them, Virgil's group hit the water. Elijah fired again. Another scream human this time. A body splashed into the creek. 2 down, he said grimly. At least 2 more. Virgil. Still coming. The horses were flagging now, their earlier terror giving way to exhaustion. They'd been running hard for nearly 10 minutes, and even fear couldn't sustain that pace forever. We need to stop, Clara said. Find a place to make a stand. There's an old homestead about half a mile up, abandoned years ago, but the walls are still solid. Elijah scanned the darkness. If we can get inside, they'll have to come to us. And if they just wait us out, then we wait longer. Whitmore's men are hired guns. They get paid by the job, not the hour. If this drags on, they might decide it's not worth the trouble. It was a thin hope, but it was something. The homestead appeared as a darker shape against the night sky. Clara steered toward it, praying the structure was as solid as Elijah remembered. They pulled the wagon behind what remained of a barn out of sight from the road. Elijah grabbed Clara, grabbed the evidence box and the rifles, and they ran for the main building. The door hung crooked on its hinges, but it still closed. The walls were thick, built by someone who knew about cold winters and hard times. No windows on the ground floor, just narrow slits meant for ventilation and defense. "Get in the corner," Elijah told Clara. "Both of you. Stay low." He positioned himself by one of the slits, rifle ready. Silence fell, heavy and complete. Even the horses had gone quiet, too exhausted to make noise. Then slowly, the sound of approaching hoofbeats. "Thornton," Virgil's voice came from the darkness outside. "We know you're in there." Elijah didn't respond. "You killed 2 of my men. Good men with families. You think there won't be consequences for that?" "They were shooting at my son." Elijah's voice was steady. "Any man who threatens my boy dies. That's not a threat, it's a promise." "Your boy ain't the target, Eli. Never was. Just give us Clara, and this all ends peacefully." "Peacefully?" Clara couldn't stay silent. She moved toward the slit, ignoring Elijah's warning hand. "You call 2 years of imprisonment peaceful? You call destroying letters and watching Eli suffer peaceful? You're a coward and a traitor, Virgil. Don't pretend this is about peace." Silence from outside. Then a different voice, older, cultured, carrying that particular arrogance Clara knew too well. Marcus Whitmore. "Miss Sullivan, how delightful to hear your voice again." Clara's blood froze. "You didn't think I'd stay behind while my men did the dirty work, did you? I'm not that kind of man." Whitmore's voice dripped with false pleasantness. "I prefer to handle important matters personally." "There's nothing to handle," Clara said. "I'm not your property. I never was." "The contract your father signed says otherwise." "A contract I never agreed to. A contract signed without my knowledge or consent. That's not marriage, Mr. Whitmore. That's slavery." "Such dramatic language. Your father warned me you had a flair for the theatrical." Whitmore's tone shifted, sharpening. "But let me be clear about your situation. You're trapped in an abandoned building with a man and a child. I have 4 armed men outside and more on the way. The nearest help is miles away, and no one's coming to save you." "We don't need saving." Elijah spoke now, his voice hard as granite. "We've got rifles, ammunition, and all the time in the world. You want to try storming this place? Go ahead. See how many of your hired guns are willing to die for your bruised ego." Brave words from a dirt farmer. This dirt farmer just dropped 2 of your men in a creek. You want to find out what he can do with solid walls and a clear line of fire? The silence stretched. Clara imagined Whitmore outside, calculating odds, weighing costs. Men like him didn't survive by taking unnecessary risks. "Very well." Whitmore's voice had gone cold. "If you won't be reasonable, we'll simply wait. The sun comes up in a few hours. Then we'll see how brave you are in daylight." Hoofbeats retreated slightly, but not completely. They were setting up a perimeter surrounding the building, cutting off escape. Elijah turned to Clara, his face grim in the darkness. "We've got maybe 5 hours until dawn. After that, they'll have the advantage." "What do we do?" "We wait for an opportunity. One of them will make a mistake, get too close, drop their guard, something. When they do, we move." Sammy tugged at Clara's sleeve. His small face was pale but determined. "Miss Clara, I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "There's a way out. I can feel it." Elijah moved closer. "What do you mean, son? When we came in, I felt—" The boy paused, struggling to find words for something that didn't quite fit into language. "There's a space. Under the floor. It goes somewhere." Clara and Elijah exchanged glances. "A cellar?" Clara asked. "Maybe. Or a tunnel. People used to hide from Indians, didn't they? Papa told me stories about it." Elijah knelt, running his hands across the wooden floor. In the darkness, it was almost impossible to see anything, but his fingers found what his eyes couldn't, a seam in the boards, too regular to be natural. "There." He pressed down, and a section of floor shifted. "Sammy, you brilliant boy." The trapdoor opened onto blackness, complete and absolute. A smell of earth and old air rose from below. "I'll go first," Elijah said. "If it's safe, you follow with Sammy." He lowered himself through the opening, disappearing into the darkness. Clara held her breath, counting seconds. Then his voice came from below, echoing slightly. "It's a tunnel. Goes about 20 feet, then opens up. I can feel cold air. There's an exit somewhere." Clara lifted Sammy and handed him down to his father. Then she grabbed the evidence box and lowered herself through the trapdoor, ignoring the screaming protest from her feet as they hit the packed earth below. Elijah pulled the trapdoor closed above them. Darkness swallowed everything. "Hold on to my coat," Elijah whispered. "Don't let go for anything." They moved forward blind, guided only by touch and the faint current of fresh air that grew stronger as they walked. The tunnel was narrow. Clara's shoulders brushed the walls on both sides, but it was passable. After what felt like an eternity, the darkness ahead began to lighten. Not sunrise, they hadn't been walking that long, but moonlight filtering through some opening ahead. The tunnel ended at a small hole in a hillside, hidden by brush. They emerged into the night about 50 yards from the homestead, on the opposite side from where Whitmore's men had positioned themselves. Elijah surveyed the terrain quickly. "The wagon's out. They'll have someone watching the barn, but we can make it on foot if we move fast." "To where?" "Henderson's place. It's closer than Cheyenne, and Tom Henderson's no friend of Whitmore's. The man foreclosed on his brother's farm last year." Elijah took Sammy's hand. 3 miles, maybe 4. "Can you make it?" Clara looked at her bandaged feet, already throbbing from the tunnel. 3 miles through snow. In the dark. With Whitmore's men potentially on their trail. She thought about the alternative. Being caught. Being dragged back to Silver Creek. Watching Elijah and Sammy face whatever revenge Whitmore planned for them. "I can make it." They moved through the darkness, staying low, using every bit of cover the land provided. Behind them, the homestead sat silent, its occupants unaware that their prisoners had vanished. It wouldn't last. Eventually, someone would check on them. Eventually, the escape would be discovered. But by then, Clara intended to be miles away. Sammy walked between the adults, small hand gripping his father's coat. He didn't complain about the cold or the distance, just kept moving one foot in front of the other with the same grim determination that seemed to run in the Thornton blood. They'd covered maybe a mile when shouts erupted behind them. "They found the tunnel," Elijah said. "Move, now!" Clara ran. Her feet screamed in agony, each step tearing at barely healed wounds. Blood soaked through the bandages into the boots, leaving dark prints in the snow behind her. But she kept running. Hoofbeats thundered in the distance. Whitmore's men mounted now, spreading out to search. "There's a ravine ahead," Elijah said. "If we can get into it, they won't be able to follow on horseback." The ravine appeared as a dark slash in the landscape. Elijah helped Sammy down first, then reached for Clara. "Jump. I'll catch you." She jumped. His arms caught her, steadied her, set her on solid ground. They scrambled along the ravine floor, following its winding path away from the road. Above them, hoofbeats passed once, twice, but the riders didn't stop. Couldn't see them in the darkness. Slowly, the sounds of pursuit faded. They emerged from the ravine into a small valley. And there, in the distance, lights burned in a farmhouse window. "Henderson's." Elijah breathed. "We made it." Clara's legs gave out. She collapsed into the snow, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion and pain and the accumulated terror of the past hours. Elijah was beside her, instantly lifting her, carrying her the final distance like he'd carried her from that frozen road 5 days ago. The farmhouse door opened before they reached it. A man stood silhouetted in the light, tall, bearded, holding a shotgun with the casual ease of someone who knew how to use it. "Thornton. That you?" "It's me, Tom. I need help." Henderson took in the scene, Elijah carrying a woman, Sammy, trailing behind all of them, snow-covered and exhausted, and clearly running from something. "Get inside. All of you. Now." The warmth hit Clara like a physical force. She was vaguely aware of being set down in a chair of blankets being wrapped around her, of voices talking urgently somewhere above her head. Then Sammy's small hand found hers. "You did good, Miss Clara. You ran real far." "Not far enough." Her voice came out as a croak. "Whitmore ain't getting in this house." Henderson's voice firm and certain. "I got 4 sons, all of them good shots. Whitmore wants to bring his trouble to my door. He'll find more trouble than he bargained for." "He's got men," Elijah said. "Armed men. I don't want to bring danger to your family." "You let me worry about my family." Henderson set his shotgun down, but within easy reach. "Sarah, get these folks some food. Boys, you know what to do." The farmhouse erupted into controlled chaos. Henderson's wife, a sturdy woman with kind eyes, brought bread, cheese, hot coffee. 4 young men ranging from late teens to early 20s took up positions at windows and doors. "Whitmore's been squeezing folks in this territory for years," Henderson said, settling into a chair across from Elijah. "My brother lost everything to that man. I've been waiting for someone to stand up to him. Standing up might get you killed. Might, but lying down definitely gets me robbed." Henderson's jaw set. "What's this about Thornton? The whole truth?" Elijah looked at Clara. She nodded. They told him everything. The letters, the imprisonment, Virgil's betrayal, the evidence in the box, the plan to reach Cheyenne, and the federal marshal. When they finished, Henderson sat back, expression thoughtful. "You've got proof, real solid proof." Clara handed him the evidence box. He rifled through it, pausing at the payment receipt from Whitmore to Virgil. "This is damning. Damning enough to put him away. Damning enough to get the attention of people who matter. Marshal Collins in Cheyenne doesn't take kindly to men who think they're above the law." Henderson closed the box. "Problem is getting there. Whitmore's got the roads watched by now." "There's another way." One of Henderson's sons spoke up, the oldest, a serious young man with his father's build. "The old mountain trail. It's rough going, especially in winter, but it comes out on the other side of the territory. Whitmore's men won't think to watch it." "That trail's dangerous," Henderson said. "Rock slides, wolves, weather that can turn on you without warning. More dangerous than the roads with hired guns waiting." Henderson considered this. Then slowly he nodded. "James'll guide you. He knows that trail better than anyone." He looked at Elijah. "You trust me. I trust you. Then trust this: by the time you get to Cheyenne, word of what's happening here will have spread. Whitmore's not the only powerful man in this territory. He's got enemies, people, he's cheated families, he's ruined. They'll be watching. If Collins takes your evidence and moves against him, Whitmore won't have anywhere to hide." Dawn was breaking when they finally allowed themselves to rest. Clara's feet had been rebandaged by Mrs. Henderson properly this time, with salve and clean cloth. The bleeding had stopped, but the damage was significant. "You shouldn't be walking at all," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice gentle, but worried. "Whatever you've been through, your body needs time to heal." "Time's not something we have." "Then at least take a horse. James can lead you on the trail, but you shouldn't be on foot." Clara looked at Elijah. They'd lost the wagon, the supplies, everything except the evidence box and the clothes on their backs. "We'll take whatever you can spare," Elijah said. "And I'll pay you back, every cent." "Forget cents." Henderson clasped his shoulder. "Just bring that bastard down. That'll be payment enough for all of us." They left at midday, following James Henderson up a narrow track that wound into the mountains. The going was slow. The trail was everything they'd been warned about and more, but it was hidden. No roads, no obvious paths. Just wilderness and sky and the steady crunch of hooves on snow. Sammy rode with his father. Clara took the second horse, her injured feet unable to grip the stirrups properly. She held on with her hands, with her will, with the desperate knowledge that stopping meant capture and capture meant losing everything. They climbed higher. The air grew thin. Below them, the plains stretched out like a white ocean, farms and roads reduced to tiny scratches on the landscape. There, James pointed to a gap in the mountains ahead. We go through there. It's a straight shot down to the Cheyenne Road. Maybe a day and a half from here. And Whitmore's men won't know to look. This trail hasn't been used regularly in years. My father showed it to me when I was Sammy's age, said it was important to know ways in and out that others didn't. They pushed on. That night, they made camp in a small cave sheltered from wind and snow. James built a fire, while Elijah settled Sammy into makeshift bedding. Clara sat near the flames, staring at the evidence box in her lap. You're quiet. Elijah sat down beside her. I'm thinking. About what happens after. Even if we get to Cheyenne, even if the marshal believes us, even if Whitmore faces justice. She paused. What then? Do we go back to the ranch? Pretend none of this happened. Build a life on the ashes of the one that was stolen from us. Elijah was silent for a moment. I don't know what we build, he said finally, but I know we build it together. That's enough to start with. Is it? It's more than I had a week ago. He took her hand. A week ago, I was a man going through the motions, raising my son, working my land, trying not to think about the future because the future felt empty. His grip tightened. You came back, Clara. Against all odds, against everything that was stacked against you, you came back. If that's not a sign that we're supposed to try, I don't know what is. Clara looked at their joined hands, his skin rough against hers, his warmth bleeding into her cold fingers. I'm scared, she admitted. I've been scared for 2 years. I don't know how to stop. You don't have to stop. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. Elijah lifted her hand to his lips. But fear shared is fear halved. Whatever comes, we face it together. You, me, Sammy, we're not alone anymore. Sammy appeared at Elijah's elbow, wrapped in a blanket, eyes heavy with sleep. Papa? Miss Clara, are we safe now? Clara pulled the boy close, settling him between them by the fire. We're getting there, sweetheart. We're getting there. The next day brought the descent. James led them down treacherous switchbacks across frozen streams through stands of pine so dense the daylight barely penetrated. And then finally, as the sun began to set on the second day, they saw it. Cheyenne. The town sprawled across the valley floor, larger than Clara had expected. Buildings of brick and wood streets laid out in a proper grid, people moving about their business like the world wasn't falling apart. The marshal's office is on Main Street, James said. Red building, can't miss it. Ask for Marshal Collins, he's the one you want. Elijah clasped the young man's arm. Thank you for everything. Just doing what's right. Take care of yourselves, and take care of that little boy. James smiled at Sammy. He's something special. We know, Clara said softly. Believe me, we know. They rode into Cheyenne as darkness fell. Clara had never felt more exhausted in her life, more battered, more aware of her own body's limits. But she'd also never felt more alive. They'd made it. Against Whitmore's money, and men against Virgil's betrayal, against the winter itself, they'd made it. The red building was exactly where James had said. A sign proclaimed Federal Marshal in letters, weathered but still legible. Elijah helped Clara down from her horse. Sammy climbed down himself, straightening his small frame with determination. Ready? Elijah asked. Clara gripped the evidence box. Ready. They walked through the door together. The man behind the desk looked up. Late 50s, steel-gray hair eyes that had seen everything and were surprised by nothing. His badge caught the lamplight. Help you folks? Marshal Collins. Elijah stepped forward. My name is Elijah Thornton. This is Clara Sullivan. We've got evidence against Marcus Whitmore of Silver Creek. The marshal's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Whitmore. Now that's a name I've been waiting to hear. He stood, gesturing to chairs. Sit down. Tell me everything. They sat. And Clara began to tell the story of 2 years lost, and the long, bloody road to justice. Outside, snow began to fall again. But inside the marshal's office, warmth and hope burned bright. Marshal Collins listened without interruption. He let Clara speak, let Elijah fill in the gaps, let the evidence speak for itself. When they finished, the clock on his wall showed nearly midnight, and Sammy had fallen asleep in his father's arms. The marshal sat back, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. "You're telling me Marcus Whitmore, one of the wealthiest men in the territory, conspired with your foreman to kidnap and imprison a woman for 2 years, that he paid for this service, that he intended to force her into marriage against her will?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you," Clara said. "And I have proof." She pushed the evidence box across the desk. Collins opened it, rifling through the contents with methodical care. He paused at the payment receipt, held it up to the lamplight. $200, services rendered. His voice was flat. "And these letters? The ones I wrote to Elijah, the ones Virgil Hayes destroyed or tried to destroy. He kept them instead. Insurance, maybe? Or a trophy?" Collins read the first letter, then the second. By the third, something had shifted in his expression, a hardening around the jaw, a coldness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Miss Sullivan, in my 20 years as a federal marshal, I've seen a lot of things. Men who thought they were above the law. Men who bought judges and sheriffs and entire town councils. Men who believed their money made them untouchable." He set the letters down carefully. "But this is something else entirely." "Is it enough?" Elijah asked. "To bring him down? It's enough to arrest him. Whether it's enough to convict..." Collins shrugged. "That depends on judges and juries and lawyers. But I can tell you this, Whitmore's made enemies. Lots of them. Once word gets out that he's facing federal charges, people will start talking. The ones he's squeezed, the ones he's cheated, the ones who've been waiting for someone else to throw the first punch. And Virgil Hayes. Conspiracy charges, accessory to kidnapping, fraud." The marshal's voice hardened. "He'll hang or spend the rest of his life breaking rocks. Either way, he's finished." Clara felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief, not yet, but hope. Real, solid hope that justice might actually be served. "What happens now?" "Now you rest. There's a hotel down the street, the Plainsman. Tell them I sent you. They'll put it on my account." Collins stood moving toward a gun cabinet in the corner. "Tomorrow I ride for Silver Creek with a posse. Whitmore won't come quietly, but he'll come." "He has men," Elijah warned. "Armed men. And he knows we escaped, he'll be expecting trouble." "Let him expect it." The marshal pulled a rifle from the cabinet, checked its action. "I've been waiting for an excuse to take on Marcus Whitmore for 5 years. Now I've got one." They left the marshal's office and made their way to the hotel. The night clerk took one look at their exhausted faces and battered clothes, then handed over a key without asking questions. The room was simple: 2 beds, a washstand, a window looking out over the main street. Clara sank onto one of the beds, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion now that the immediate danger had passed. Elijah settled Sammy on the other bed, covering the boy with blankets that smelled like lavender and soap. Clean, safe, foreign after days of running. "He's amazing," Clara said softly, watching the sleeping child. Through everything, the chase, the fear, the cold, he never complained. Not once. He's had practice. Elijah sat on the edge of her bed, close, but not touching. When Martha died, he was just a baby. But somehow he understood that crying wouldn't help. That what I needed was strength, not tears. He shook his head. No child should have to learn that lesson so young. Maybe not, but he learned it anyway, and it made him who he is. Elijah turned to look at her. In the dim lamplight, his face showed every mile of the journey they'd taken, the exhaustion, the worry, the determination that had carried them through. "Clara, when this is over, when Whitmore's in chains and we're back at the ranch..." "Yes." He reached out his rough hand, cupping her cheek. I want to do this properly. I want to court you the way I should have 2 years ago before everything went wrong. I want to give you the choice I never got to give you, then the choice to stay, or go to build something with me, or walk away free." Clara's throat tightened. "Eli, I know it's not romantic. I know there should be flowers and pretty words and—" "Stop." She pressed her hand over his. "I don't need flowers. I don't need pretty words. I've had 2 years of pretty things that meant nothing. What I need is this. What I need is you being honest with me, asking instead of assuming. Is that a yes? It's a yes to trying, a yes to staying, a yes to finding out what we can build together now that we finally have the chance." Elijah leaned forward and kissed her. Gentle, careful. The kiss of a man who'd learned that some things were too precious to rush. When they pulled apart, Clara was crying. Not from sadness, from relief. From the overwhelming sensation of finally being exactly where she was supposed to be. "Get some sleep," Elijah said softly. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She lay back on the bed, and for the first time in years, sleep came easily. Morning brought news. Marshal Collins had gathered his posse, 8 men, all experienced, all armed. They'd ridden out at dawn, headed for Silver Creek. "Word travels fast in this territory," the hotel clerk told them over breakfast. "By noon, everyone from here to Denver will know the federal marshal's coming for Marcus Whitmore." "Good," Clara said. "Let them know." They spent the day waiting. Clara's feet were healing well, Mrs. Henderson's salve had done its work, but she still couldn't walk far without pain. Elijah took Sammy to the general store, bought supplies they'd need for the journey home. Normal things, ordinary things, the kind of errands that felt strange after days of running for their lives. By late afternoon, word came back. Marcus Whitmore had been arrested. He'd barricaded himself in his mansion with a handful of loyal guards, but when the marshal's posse surrounded the building and threatened to burn it down around him, he'd surrendered. Virgil Hayes had been found hiding in a boarding house 2 towns over, trying to flee the territory. He'd been taken into custody as well. Clara heard the news and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not triumph, not relief. Just emptiness, the hollow space left behind when something that had consumed your life suddenly ceased to exist. "It's over," she said. Elijah stood beside her at the hotel window, watching the streets of Cheyenne fill with people celebrating the fall of a man who'd oppressed them for years. "The legal part isn't over. There'll be trials testimony. You'll have to tell your story again, probably more than once. I know, but the running's over, the hiding, the fear that he'll show up in the middle of the night and drag me back." She turned to face him. "For 2 years, I lived in a constant state of terror. Every sound was him coming for me. Every stranger was someone he'd sent. I couldn't eat without wondering if it was drugged. Couldn't sleep without nightmares." Her voice broke. "And now it's just done. He's in chains. He can't touch me." Elijah pulled her close. She buried her face in his chest, and for the first time since her escape, she let herself truly cry. Not tears of fear or exhaustion, but tears of release, the accumulated grief of 2 stolen years finally finding its way out. He held her until the crying stopped, until her breathing steadied, until she pulled back and wiped her eyes with hands that no longer trembled. "I want to go home," she said. "Your home. Our home if you'll have me. There's nothing I want more." They left Cheyenne 2 days later. The marshal had taken their testimony, promised to call them back when the trials began. But for now, they were free to go. The journey home took 5 days. They traveled slowly, resting often, giving Clara's feet time to finish healing. Sammy rode between them, chattering about everything and nothing, filling the silence with the endless questions only a child could ask. "Miss Clara, when we get home, will you teach me more braiding?" "Of course I will." "And will you cook breakfast? Papa burns the eggs." "I do not," Elijah protested. "You do. They're always crispy on the bottom." Clara laughed. really laughed for the first time in longer than she could remember. "I'll cook breakfast," she promised. "No crispy eggs." On the third day, they passed through the town where everything had started. The general store where Elijah had bought supplies before finding Clara on the road. The boarding house where Virgil had stayed. The saloon where he'd drunk away his guilt while his victims suffered. People stared as they rode through. Word had spread about what had happened, about Whitmore's arrest, about Virgil's betrayal, about the woman who'd walked barefoot through a blizzard to escape captivity. Clara lifted her chin and met their stares. Let them look. Let them see what survived when powerful men tried to break it. On the fifth day, the Thornton Ranch appeared on the horizon. Clara felt her breath catch. The cabin looked smaller than she remembered, weathered and worn, just a simple structure against the vast expanse of plains. But smoke rose from the chimney, and the Henderson boy who'd been watching the place came out to greet them with a wave. "You're back! We heard what happened. The whole territory's talking about it." "All good things, I hope," Elijah said. "Depends who you ask." The boy grinned. "Whitmore's friends are keeping quiet, but everyone else, they're calling you heroes." Heroes. Clara turned the word over in her mind. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired, scarred, changed in ways she was still trying to understand, but she also felt something else. Home. They dismounted and walked toward the cabin. Sammy ran ahead, eager to see his room, his things, all the familiar comforts he'd been missing. Clara paused on the porch, her hand on the doorframe. "What is it?" Elijah asked. "I'm trying to memorize this moment, the way it feels to be standing here, finally free, finally where I belong." She looked at him. "I never want to forget what it cost to get here. The pain, the fear, the people who helped us along the way. I want to remember all of it." "You will. We both will." He took her hand. "Come inside. Let me show you where you'll be sleeping." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Where I'll be sleeping?" A flush crept up Elijah's neck. "In the back room, proper. Until we make things official." She smiled, the first real smile that had felt natural in days. "You're a good man, Elijah Thornton." "I try to be." They entered the cabin together. The weeks that followed settled into routine. Clara's feet healed completely, leaving scars she'd carry forever, but no lasting damage. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, the early mornings, the endless chores, the satisfaction of honest work, producing tangible results. Sammy adopted her completely. He followed her around the cabin, asked her questions about everything, showed her his favorite hiding spots and his collection of interesting rocks, and the grave on the hillside where his mother rested. "Mama would like you," he said one afternoon, standing before Martha's headstone. "She told me so." Clara didn't question how a child could know what his dead mother thought. She'd learned not to question anything Sammy said. "I hope so. I'm going to do my best to take care of your papa. And you." "I know." Sammy slipped his hand into hers. "That's why she sent you." Word came from Cheyenne in late January. The trials would begin in March. Clara's testimony was required. She'd need to tell her story before a judge and jury with Whitmore watching from the defendant's chair. She read the letter twice, then set it aside. "Are you all right?" Elijah asked. "I'm nervous, but not afraid." She looked at him. "There's a difference." "I'll be there with you, every day, every hour, whatever you need." "I know you will." The night before they were to leave for Cheyenne, Elijah found her on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars. "Can't sleep." "Don't want to. Tomorrow everything changes again. I wanted one more night of peace before the storm." He sat beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about what happens after the trials, after everything's settled. And I want to build an addition onto the cabin. Another room, maybe two. Space for—" He hesitated. "For a family. A real family. If that's something you want." Clara's heart swelled. Are you asking me to marry you, Elijah Thornton? Not yet. I'm asking if marriage is something you'd consider. Someday. When you're ready. When you've had time to be sure this is what you want. She turned to face him, studying his features in the starlight. The strong jaw. The kind eyes. The lines around his mouth that had softened over the weeks they'd spent together. I don't need more time. I was sure the moment I woke up in your cabin and saw you watching over me. She took his hand. But I appreciate you asking. I appreciate you giving me the choice. Then yes. When the trials are over, when we're back home, when life settles into whatever passes for normal, yes, I'll marry you. Elijah pulled her close and kissed her under the stars. Not gentle this time, urgent, passionate, the kiss of a man who'd finally found what he thought he'd lost forever. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Clara laughed. We should probably go inside before we scandalize the horses. The horses have seen worse. But they went inside anyway, and for the first time since her return, Clara slept in Elijah's arms. The trials lasted 3 weeks. Clara testified for 2 full days. She told her story without flinching, without tears, without letting Whitmore's cold stare shake her resolve. She described the arranged marriage, the kidnapping, the imprisonment. She read her letters aloud, the desperate words she'd written to a man she thought had abandoned her. When she stepped down from the witness stand, the courtroom was silent. Elijah testified next. Then Virgil Hayes turned against his employers in exchange for a reduced sentence. Then a parade of witnesses, the Henderson family, Doc Brennan, other victims who'd suffered under Whitmore's schemes. The verdict came on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus Whitmore, guilty of kidnapping, false imprisonment, conspiracy, fraud, and assault, sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Virgil Hayes, guilty of conspiracy, mail fraud, and perjury, sentenced to 15 years. Henry Sullivan. Clara's father had fled the territory before charges could be filed. A warrant was issued for his arrest. Clara didn't care if they ever found him. She'd already grieved the father she thought she had. The man who'd actually existed wasn't worth grieving. After the verdict was read, Clara walked out of the courtroom into bright spring sunshine. Elijah stood waiting with Sammy, both of them grinning like they'd won the greatest prize in the world. "It's done," she said. "It's done." She hugged them both right there in the middle of the Cheyenne Street, not caring who saw or what they thought. They were married in May. The ceremony was small, just the Henderson family, Doc Brennan, a few neighboring ranchers who'd become friends during the ordeal. Clara wore a simple blue dress instead of white. She'd had enough of wedding gowns to last a lifetime. Sammy served as ring-bearer, walking down the aisle between the assembled guests with the solemn concentration of a boy performing the most important task of his life. "Do you, Elijah James Thornton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Clara May Sullivan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara looked at Elijah, at the man who'd found her bleeding in the snow, who'd believed her when no one else would, who'd risked everything to give her the chance to choose her own future. "I do." The preacher pronounced them man and wife. Elijah kissed her, and the small crowd cheered, and somewhere above them, Clara liked to think Martha Thornton was smiling. The reception was held at the ranch. The Hendersons had helped prepare food and decorations. The cabin looked almost unrecognizable, ribbons on the porch posts. Flowers on every surface, a feast spread across borrowed tables. Clara moved through it all in a daze of happiness. People congratulated her, wished her well, told her how brave she was. She accepted their kind words with gratitude. But what she really wanted was to be alone with her new family. Finally, as the sun began to set and the guests began to leave, she found herself on the porch with Elijah and Sammy, watching the last wagon disappear down the road. "Mrs. Thornton." Elijah tested the name. "Clara Thornton." "I like the sound of that." "So do I." He slipped his arm around her waist. "Welcome home." Sammy tugged at her dress. "Miss Clara, I mean Mama Clara." Clara's heart stopped. "What did you call me?" "Mama Clara. Is that okay? I know you're not my real mama, but—" The boy's face crumpled slightly. I wanted to ask, if it's okay." Clara knelt before him, ignoring the protest from knees that still remembered miles of frozen ground. "It's more than okay, it's perfect." Sammy threw his arms around her neck. She held him tight. This child who'd seen too much and understood too well who'd accepted her into his life with the pure, uncomplicated love that only children knew how to give. "I love you, Mama Clara." "I love you too, sweetheart. So much." When she stood, Elijah was watching them with tears in his eyes. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Everything." He pulled them both close. "I never thought I'd have this again. A family. A future. Reasons to wake up in the morning that didn't involve pure obligation." He kissed Clara's forehead. "You gave me that. Both of you. And I'm never going to forget it." That night, after Sammy was asleep and the cabin was quiet, Clara stood by the window and looked out at the land that was now hers. The endless plains, the distant mountains, the stars wheeling overhead in patterns that humans had watched for thousands of years. She thought about everything it had taken to reach this moment. The 2 years of imprisonment, the desperate flight through the blizzard, the chase, the terror, the uncertainty, the testimony that had stripped her bare before strangers, forcing her to relive the worst moments of her life. And she thought about what came next, a future she'd chosen for herself, a husband who loved her without conditions, a son who'd claimed her as his own, land that would feed them, shelter them, give them roots in a world that had tried so hard to make her rootless. Elijah's arms came around her from behind. "Penny, for your thoughts. I was thinking about the snow, about standing on that road barefoot and bleeding and seeing your wagon come through the storm." She leaned back against him. "If you'd taken a different route that day, or left town earlier, or decided to wait out the storm." "But I didn't." "No, you didn't." She turned in his arms. "Sometimes I think fate put me in your path. Other times I think it was pure luck. And sometimes—" She smiled. "Sometimes I think it was Martha, looking out for both of us." "Maybe it was all three." He kissed her softly. "Maybe it doesn't matter. What matters is you're here, you're safe. You're mine and I'm yours, and we've got a whole lifetime ahead of us to figure out the rest." Clara thought about the barefoot bride she'd been terrified, desperate, half-dead from cold, with nothing but a ruined dress and a heart full of hope she'd almost stopped believing in. She thought about the woman she was now healed whole, standing in her own home, with her own family, owner of her own future, for the first time in her life. The journey between those 2 points had cost her everything, and it had given her everything. "Come to bed," Elijah said. "Tomorrow there's work to do, fences to mend, cattle to tend, breakfast to cook without burning it." Clara laughed. "I thought I was handling breakfast now." "You are. I'm just making sure you remember." They walked to the bedroom together. Clara paused at the doorway, looking back at the cabin one more time, at the table where she'd first learned the truth about Virgil's betrayal, at the chair where she'd held Sammy while he slept, at the stove where she'd started to remember what it felt like to be useful. "Clara, I'm coming." She stepped through the doorway, leaving the past behind. Outside, the wind whispered across the plains, carrying with it the last traces of winter. Spring had come to the territory, bringing warmth and new growth, and the promise of better days ahead. And in the small cabin on the edge of nowhere, a family that had been forged in fire and snow settled in for the night together at last. The storm had passed. The sun was rising. And Clara May Thornton, barefoot bride no more, had finally found her way home. Some journeys end where they begin. Others carry you so far from your starting point that you can never go back. Clara's journey had done both, brought her back to the man she'd loved and transformed her into someone entirely new. She'd entered that blizzard as a captive. She'd emerged as a survivor. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not the money Whitmore had lost. Not the prison cell Virgil occupied. Not the father who'd sold her, or the mother who'd stood by and watched. What mattered was this moment, this place, this family. What mattered was the choice she'd made to run, to fight, to trust in something bigger than fear. And what mattered was the truth she'd carried with her through every mile of frozen ground. Love survives. Always. Even when it seems impossible. Even when everything stands against it. Even when the odds are stacked so high that giving up seems like the only reasonable option. Love survives. And Clara May Thornton, Barefoot bride, turned rancher's wife, was living proof.